It was cold that night, colder than usual. The wind blew through the broken fences behind the old apartment buildings. The streets were empty, quiet, and dark. Most people had already gone to sleep, but one man was still outside. His name was David, a quiet man who worked at the factory during the day and came home late every evening. David didn't have much. He lived alone. No wife, no kids, no one waiting for him. But there was something he did every night without fail. He left food near the alley fence for the stray dogs, old leftovers, bits of bread, or anything warm he could spare. He placed the food on a flat rock near the trash bins far away from traffic where dogs could eat in peace. He didn't do it for thanks or attention. He just couldn't stand seeing hungry creatures suffer. That night he stepped out in his worn jacket holding a small bag of food. It was meat and rice from lunch, still a little warm. As he reached the fence, he placed the food carefully, making sure it wouldn't spill. The sky above was cloudy and the street light flickered behind him. Suddenly he heard something. Not barking, not growling, not the usual soft whimpers of the strays. No, this was breathing. Slow, shaky breathing. He turned around. No one. He stepped back and looked deeper into the shadows. The air felt heavier. Then, from behind the trash bin, something moved. A small figure crawled forward. Then another. Two small bodies, thin, bony, and shaking from cold. At first, David thought they were sick children. Maybe lost, maybe abandoned. But as they stepped into the dim light, he realized they weren't human. Their skin was pale, but not like any human color. It shimmered faintly like moonlight on water. Their eyes were large, almost glowing, and they had strange markings on their arms and necks. One of them looked about 12, the other maybe 7. David didn't move. The older one slowly raised her hand, not to hurt, but to show peace. Then with a trembling voice, she whispered, "Please, don't scream. We're starving." David's heart froze. What was this? A dream, a trick? He wanted to run, call someone. But he looked at their thin arms. The younger girl was hiding behind her sister, too scared to look up. They didn't look dangerous. They looked hungry. David looked at the plate of food he had just placed. The older girl's eyes were locked on it. She didn't move forward. She was waiting for permission. Slowly, David nodded once and stepped back. The two alien girls crawled to the food like frightened animals. They didn't speak, didn't look up, just began eating slowly, carefully, as if afraid someone might take it away. David watched in silence. He could hear the soft chewing, the way they sighed after each bite. The little one even gave a small smile. When the food was gone, the older girl stood up and bowed her head. "Thank you, human." David's mouth was dry. He didn't know what to say. Finally, he asked in a quiet voice, Who are you?" The older girl looked around, then said, "We came from up there." She pointed to the sky. David looked up, then back at her. "You mean space?" She nodded slowly. "Our ship broke. We fell. We hid. People chase us." The younger one held her sister's hand tightly. Her lips were blue from the cold. David's heart twisted. He couldn't imagine what they had gone through. No food, no home, no help. "Come with me," he said before he could stop himself. The older girl stepped back, afraid. "You will sell us?" David shook his head quickly. "No, never. I have more food. A warm place. You can rest. Just for a night." The girls looked at each other. The younger one whispered something in a language David didn't understand. The older nodded. They followed him. David opened the back door to his apartment and let them inside. The warmth hit their faces. The little one made a soft, happy sound. He led them to the small basement. It was dusty and old, but it had a heater, a soft rug, and a spare mattress. He brought more food, warm blankets, and a cup of water. The girls sat close, eating slowly, their eyes filled with both fear and wonder. As David closed the door to give them privacy, he paused. 2 alien girls, hiding from the world, now sleeping in his home. He never imagined kindness would lead to this, but somehow, he felt this was just the beginning. David couldn't sleep that night. Even though he was in his own bed, under his old warm blanket, his mind kept drifting back to the basement. 2 alien girls, real aliens, were sleeping just below him. He wasn't dreaming. He wasn't crazy. He had seen their glowing eyes, heard their voices, and watched them eat like they hadn't eaten in days. He turned on his side. Then the other side, no use. His heart was still racing. What if someone found out? What if they were dangerous or worse? What if someone was already looking for them? David sat up, breathing slowly. He glanced at the basement door. It was closed but not locked. His mind replayed the older girl's words. You will sell us? That voice, so soft, so full of fear. And the younger one, she hadn't even spoken. She just clung to her sister like her life depended on it. David got out of bed. He went down the steps, barefoot, quiet like a shadow. The basement was dark except for a small lamp he had left on. The two girls were curled up under the blanket, their strange skin catching the warm yellow light. He didn't want to wake them, but as he took a step forward, the older one opened her eyes, her body tensed, but then she saw him and relaxed. You came, she whispered. David nodded. Just checking if you're okay. The younger girl opened her eyes too. She looked at David, not with fear but confusion, as if she was trying to understand him. Why, did you help? The older one asked, sitting up slowly. David sat on a box near them. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, Because no one helped me when I was small. I was hungry too. The girl stared at him. David pointed to himself, then said slowly, My name is David. You? The girl paused, then nodded. I am Rissa, she said, placing a hand on her chest. Then she pointed to the younger one. She is Laura, my sister. Laura gave a shy nod. Are you real? David asked suddenly. Rissa tilted her head. We are you? David laughed for the first time in days. He looked around, then asked, How long have you been hiding? Rissa looked down. Maybe not many days. We crashed in a forest. We ran, we hid. Humans threw things at us, called us devils. David's face grew sad. I'm sorry. Not all humans are like that. Rissa looked at him closely. No, you are different. Kind. There was a pause. Then she added, But we are scared. We don't want to go back. They will find us, David leaned forward. Who will? Rissa's voice dropped low. Men in black clothes, with loud machines. They follow heat and scent. We saw them. They took others. David's heart beat faster, so there were more. Other aliens? Or was it a secret government force? He didn't know what to believe, but he knew one thing. The girls were in danger. Suddenly, Laura coughed. A weak, dry cough. David jumped up, opened a drawer, and brought a small bottle of water. She sipped it slowly. Rissa looked at him with tired eyes. Why do you help animals? David blinked. You mean the dogs? She nodded. He shrugged. They're hungry, lonely. People forget them. Rissa looked at her sister, then back at him. We are like those dogs. David didn't know what to say. The basement was silent for a while. Then from above there was a sound. A loud thud. Rissa grabbed her sister. David stood up fast, listening. It came from outside, a metal trash bin being pushed, maybe a raccoon, maybe wind, maybe. He went upstairs and peeked out the window. There was a van across the street, unmarked, black. No lights, no sound. Just parked quietly. David's blood went cold. He closed the curtain slowly. When he returned to the basement, Rissa was already standing, holding a long metal pipe she had found near the heater. We will not go back, she whispered. David raised his hands. I won't let them take you. She stared at him, unsure if she could believe that. But Laura suddenly reached out and touched David's arm. Her hand was cold, but it wasn't shaking anymore. David looked at her. She spoke her first word. Safe? David knelt down. Yes, he said softly. You're safe here. I promise. But deep in his heart, he wasn't sure how long he could keep that promise because the van outside didn't move. It just waited. And David knew. This wasn't over. The next morning, David didn't go to work. He called the factory and said he was sick. That wasn't a lie. His stomach was tight with fear, his head full of questions. He kept looking out the window again and again, but the black van was gone. Had they left? Or were they just hiding somewhere else? Downstairs in the basement, Rissa and Laura were still asleep, curled under the blanket like two small birds. Laura's little hand clung tightly to her sister's shirt, even in sleep. David sat in the kitchen with a mug of cheap coffee, trying to think. What now? He couldn't keep two alien girls hidden forever. But he also couldn't let them go back outside to die. When Risa finally came upstairs, she looked different. Her eyes were tired but calmer. She had cleaned her face, combed her strange silver hair with an old plastic brush, and wore one of David's oversized hoodies. She looked almost human. "You hungry?" David asked. She nodded. "Laura, too." David made eggs and toast. The smell filled the room. Risa watched every move he made like she was learning something new. She even copied the way he held the fork, though her hands were a bit shaky. "You two really fell from the sky?" David asked carefully. Risa didn't answer at first. Then she looked out the window. "We came in a small escape ship. Our real ship was big, with many families. But it was hit, broken. We fell." David blinked. "Hit? Like in a battle?" She shook her head slowly. "No battle. Something inside. Someone bad. They made it fall." That answer didn't make David feel better. "Where's your ship now?" Risa pointed toward the forest. "Burned. In pieces, far. And the others?" "Your people." Her voice dropped. "Dead or taken or hiding." David put down his fork. "And you and Laura? You ran?" Risa nodded. "We ran many nights. Hid under rocks and drains. Some humans saw us. Some threw stones. Some tried to catch." David's hands curled into fists. He wasn't proud of what some humans did. "Why not go to the police?" he asked. Risa gave him a strange look. "We don't trust uniforms. They don't ask questions. They take." David understood. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Laura came upstairs next. Her feet were bare, her steps soft like a cat. She still didn't talk much, but her eyes lit up when she saw the toast. She sat next to her sister, leaned close, and began to eat. David watched them quietly. They ate like hungry kids, but their movements were careful, almost trained. They were used to hiding, running, surviving, not living. After breakfast, Risa picked up a spoon and held it in front of her. She turned it around, looking at her reflection. "Why do humans give food to others with tools?" she asked. David smiled. "It's just how we eat. Not all animals do, but humans like using forks and spoons." Risa nodded like she was studying a new species, which, in a way, she was. Then she asked something unexpected. "Why do you live alone, David?" He paused. No one had asked him that in a long time. "My parents are gone. No brothers. No wife, just me. Life didn't go the way I planned." Risa lowered her eyes. "You are like us then," David chuckled softly. "Maybe we're more alike than we thought." A quiet moment passed between them. Then Risa asked, "If we are not found, can we stay here?" David looked at her. Those eyes, bright, hopeful, but also scared. He didn't answer right away. "It's not safe," he said finally. "People will notice. Neighbors, drones, something. One day they'll find you." Risa nodded slowly. "Then we leave. When it's dark?" David stood up and shook his head. "You don't need to run again, not yet. Let me think of something better, safer." Laura looked up, and for the first time, she smiled. Just a small one, but it made something warm move in David's chest. That evening, as the sun went down, David took out a dusty notebook and began making a list. Extra blankets, warm clothes, medical supplies, basement lock, old radio parts, forest map. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew this. These girls had no one, and now they had him. That had to mean something. It started with a strange humming in the night. David was brushing his teeth when the sound floated through the open bathroom window. Soft at first, like a distant engine, then louder, sharper, like something hovering low in the sky. He rushed to the window and looked out. A drone. Sleek, black, and unlike any delivery drone he had seen before. It moved in a slow, careful circle above the houses, almost like it was sniffing the air. David's heart pounded. He stepped back, turned off the lights, and ran downstairs to the basement. Risa and Laura were already awake, standing in the corner, alert like animals sensing a predator. "It's back," Risa said softly. "We've seen that one before." David clenched his jaw. That drone wasn't from Amazon. The next morning, David didn't open his curtains. He didn't water the plants. He didn't even leave the house. He spent the entire day turning his basement into a secret shelter. He moved old boxes to block the windows, sealed cracks in the walls with tape and foam, and even plugged the air vents with cloth to block heat signatures. If the drone was scanning for heat, he'd give it nothing to scan. Risa helped him, following every instruction without question. She worked fast, sharp, and quiet. Laura stayed close, mostly drawing shapes on a notepad David had given her. Her drawings were strange. Curved ships, tall glowing trees, star maps. David stared at them once and asked, "Is this your home?" Laura just nodded, and for a moment David saw a deep sadness in her small eyes. Later that evening, Risa climbed up to the kitchen. David gave her a hoodie and a baseball cap to wear. "We need to talk," she said, her voice serious. David leaned against the counter. "I'm listening." Risa looked out the window before speaking. "They are close. The ones who search, they don't wear army suits. They don't flash badges. They smile, but their eyes are wrong." David frowned. "Who are they?" Risa shook her head. "Not sure. Not human military. Maybe private. Maybe secret. They call us property." David's hands curled into fists. "You're not property. You're children." Risa tilted her head. "To them we are experiments. Escaped ones." David couldn't breathe for a moment. That explained the black vans, the drones, the fear. "So you weren't just survivors," he whispered. "You were being held," Risa nodded. "Our ship was damaged. We were rescued, but not by kind people. We escaped their base, and now they want us back." That night, David walked outside pretending to take out the trash. He spotted the same van 2 blocks away, parked, lights off. No movement, but it was there, watching, waiting. He went back inside and locked every door. The next morning, something strange happened. A woman rang the doorbell. She wore a bright yellow jacket, carried a clipboard, and smiled too wide. "Hi there. Just checking gas meters for the neighborhood. Quick inspection. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes." David nodded slowly. "You work for the city?" She flashed a badge too fast for him to read, of course. Standard procedure. David didn't move. Behind him, he heard soft steps on the basement stairs. Risa was listening from behind the door. "Sorry," David said, forcing a fake smile. "My dog's sick. Can't let strangers in today." The woman smiled again, but her eyes stayed locked on his face. "No problem. I'll come back later." As she walked away, David watched her join a man across the street. He wore sunglasses and was pretending to read a newspaper at 7 a.m. This wasn't a gas check. They were trying to get inside. David sat at the table that night, his head in his hands. "I don't think I can protect you for long," he said to Risa. "They're closing in." Risa stood silently, her eyes sharp. "Then we hide better." David looked up. "How?" She smiled faintly. "Let me show you something." She led him to the basement, moved the mattress aside. Underneath, she pulled out a small silver cube David had never seen before. It was warm to the touch, and when she tapped it, the cube unfolded into a flat circle like a glowing disc. "This is from our pod," she explained. "We used it to shield heat signals. For a short time only." David stared in wonder. "You had this all along?" She nodded. "We didn't trust you. Now we do." Laura pressed her hand to the disc and it blinked blue. "It'll hide this basement for 2 nights. After that, we must move." David felt a strange mix of fear and hope. He wasn't alone in this anymore. These girls weren't helpless. They were survivors. As the basement lit up with soft blue light, David whispered, "Then we prepare for war." And for the first time, Risa smiled like a soldier. Rain hit the windows like soft fingers tapping a warning. David stood in his living room, arms crossed, staring at the curtains. He hadn't opened them in days. Outside, the world looked normal. Kids walked to school, neighbors carried groceries, a dog barked 2 houses down. But behind that peaceful mask, danger waited. They were still out there. The watchers, the hunters, the ones who wanted Risa and Laura. Down in the basement, the alien heat-shielding device glowed a soft blue, keeping the girls hidden from scanning drones. But it would only work for 2 nights. Time was running out. David had changed. He was no longer just a quiet factory worker who fed stray dogs. Now, he was a protector. He spent the next day turning his house into a fortress. He nailed boards over the basement door from the inside and placed insulation inside the walls to trap heat. He installed a second lock on the back door. He even turned his old laundry room into a trap, just in case someone forced their way in. Risa watched him silently, her sharp alien eyes taking in every move. "You're preparing like we're under attack," she said. David looked at her and nodded. Because we are. Laura followed him around the house like a silent shadow. She still didn't speak much, but she had started smiling more. She liked watching the toaster pop. She liked running warm water over her hands. She liked drawing little pictures of David and their small family. One morning, she drew something new, a ship not crashing, like before, but rising, with 3 stick figures inside. David, Rissa and herself holding hands. When David saw it, he smiled. "We're not flying off just yet, kiddo," he said. Laura tilted her head, confused. "But maybe one day," he added. She smiled wider. That night, David made spaghetti. It wasn't fancy, just noodles and sauce, but Rissa and Laura ate like it was a royal feast. They sat on the floor in the basement, wrapped in blankets, the soft blue light from the alien cube glowing above them. David sat beside them. "You know," he said, picking at his plate, "I haven't had dinner with anyone in 3 years." Rissa blinked. "Why?" David shrugged. "People leave. Or they don't care. I got tired of trying." Rissa was quiet for a moment. "You care now?" He looked at her. She wasn't asking. She was telling him. He nodded. "Yeah, I care now." Later that night, Rissa approached him. Her face was serious. "We have to tell you something." David leaned forward. "What is it?" She held out a small silver badge, strange symbols carved into it. "This was on the man who tried to capture us." David took it carefully. The symbols weren't human, but the edges were bent, burned, as if it had gone through fire. "What does it mean?" Rissa's voice lowered. "He wasn't human. He wore skin like yours. But inside, he wasn't." David stared at her. "You mean, someone pretending to be human?" She nodded. "They are not from Earth, not like us. They trade lives. They sell what they catch. They want to take us back to that place." David's blood turned cold. This wasn't just the government. This was something deeper, something darker. The next morning, David heard a knock. Not the doorbell. Just a knock, soft. 2 taps. He froze. No one knocked like that. He peeked through the peephole. A man in a gray coat stood there. No umbrella, even though it was raining. His face was dry. Too dry. David didn't move. Then from the basement stairs, Rissa's voice whispered, "That's one of them." David stepped back from the door. His hand went to the baseball bat he kept near the shelf. The man outside didn't knock again. He just stood there and then walked away. That night, David sat with the girls in silence. He looked at the glowing cube. Only a few more hours before its energy ran out. "Tomorrow," he said, "we find a new place. Somewhere far. Maybe an old cabin. Maybe underground." Rissa nodded. "We'll go together." Laura touched his hand. "You come too," she said softly. It was only 2 words, but to David, it felt like a lifetime of trust. As they laid down to sleep, David looked at the ceiling and whispered to himself, "They're not just guests anymore, they're my family now." But deep in the shadows, someone else was already watching the house, and they weren't coming to talk. They were coming to take. The sound came at 3:42 a.m. Not a knock, not a voice. It was a crack, sharp and sudden, like wood splitting in half. David sat up in bed, heart racing. "They're here," he whispered. He jumped up, grabbed the baseball bat, and ran to the basement door. Rissa and Laura were already waiting in the shadows. Rissa held the silver cube, which now blinked weakly, its energy nearly gone. "You have to go," David said quickly, opening the old trap door near the furnace. It led to the crawl space under the house, and from there, out through a hidden opening into the alley. Laura was already climbing in, her eyes wide with fear. But Rissa stayed still. "What about you?" she asked. David gave her a soft smile. "I'll distract them, just go. Keep Laura safe. They'll take you," she said. "Better me than both of you." Rissa's hands trembled. "You don't have to." "I do," David said firmly. "I'm human. They won't kill me. Maybe that'll buy you time." Rissa stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped into the crawl space and whispered, "We will return for you, no matter what." And then they were gone. David stepped into the kitchen just as the front door exploded inward. 2 figures in black charged in. No words, no warning. One raised a strange weapon glowing with blue light. David dropped the bat and raised his hands. "Easy. It's just me." They paused. looked around, scanned the room. One of them pulled out a heat scanner and aimed it at the floor. The device blinked red, but no life signs. David's plan had worked. He gave them nothing. The taller figure stepped forward and grabbed David's shirt. "Where are they?" David stared into his masked face. "Gone. You're too late." A punch landed in David's stomach. He dropped to his knees. "Take him," the shorter one said. They slapped metal cuffs on his wrists, cold and humming with energy, and dragged him out of his own home. The rain was falling hard now, bouncing off the roof of a sleek black vehicle parked across the street. They shoved him inside without another word. Inside the vehicle, David sat between the two agents. His hands were tied, but his heart wasn't afraid. He had done what he had to do. He had saved them. The taller agent looked at him and said, "You're interfering with property of the syndicate." David laughed, even though his ribs ached. "You mean children? They're not property. They're people." The agent didn't reply. David looked out the window as they drove through the city. The lights blurred in the rain. His breath fogged the glass. He wondered if Rissa and Laura were already far away, or still hiding nearby, watching. They didn't take him to a police station. They took him to a warehouse. Old, rusted, empty on the outside. Inside, it was full of lights, machines, and voices speaking languages David couldn't understand. A strange red symbol was painted on the wall, a triangle with a slash through it. A woman in a lab coat walked up. Her eyes were too large. Her smile was too perfect. Not human. "You helped them escape," she said sweetly. David didn't answer. She walked around him slowly. "You think they're innocent?" she continued. "But they are dangerous. If you knew what they carry in their blood." David looked up. "I don't care what they carry. They were starving, scared, and still more human than you." The woman stopped smiling. "You'll regret this," David smiled. "Not if they're safe." She turned to one of the guards. "Put him in cell 6. We'll begin scans in the morning." As they dragged him away, David's legs felt heavy, but his heart didn't. He had made his choice. Hours passed. David sat alone in a cold, dark room. His hands were numb. His lip was bleeding, but he had no fear until he heard the alarm. A siren, then shouting, then a flash of green light. The wall behind him shook. David stood up. The metal wall hissed, then peeled open like paper. And standing in the smoke was Rissa. Her eyes glowed like stars. Behind her, Laura held a small, alien device, pulsing with energy. Rissa stepped in and grabbed his hand. "We said we'd come back." David's eyes widened. "How did you—" "We followed their signal," she said, "and we brought help." Outside, David saw the silhouette of a ship, small but armed. "Time to go," Rissa said. And together, they ran into the night. The ship shook as it rose through the night sky. David gripped the cold metal seat beneath him, his eyes wide, breath held. Outside the small side window, Earth slowly became smaller, cities glowing like stars on land. But he wasn't thinking about Earth. He was thinking about them. Rissa sat beside him, hands glowing faintly as she guided the ship. She looked focused, calm, but David could see the worry behind her eyes. Laura sat across from them, curled up with a blanket, her head resting on David's old jacket. The mission to rescue him. It had worked, but it had cost them. Just hours earlier, Rissa and Laura had found the others, a hidden group of refugees from Rissa's crashed ship. Survivors scattered across the earth, hiding in shadows, living in silence. When they learned David had been captured, they didn't hesitate. They gave Rissa an old scout vessel, barely flight-ready, and a signal tracker tuned to the Syndicate's tech. Laura begged to go with her, and Rissa agreed. They weren't running anymore. They were coming back for the human who had given them food, a bed, and something more. A reason to believe in kindness. Back in the ship, David looked at Rissa. "Are they chasing us?" he asked. Rissa's eyes stayed on the stars. "Yes," she said, "but not yet. They don't think we'll reach orbit." David raised a brow. "Will we?" Rissa smiled for the first time since they left Earth. "Yes, I made sure of it." Suddenly, the ship's console beeped. Laura sat up, eyes wide. "What is it?" David asked. Rissa's hands moved fast across the controls. "A Syndicate cruiser," she said. They just broke atmosphere. Bigger than us, faster. David looked at Laura. She wasn't scared, she was ready. Just like her sister. The ship began to rattle. A deep voice came over the comms, cold and metallic. This is an official syndicate vessel. Power down and surrender the escaped subjects and their human protector. David looked at Rissa. They tracked us. Rissa nodded. But they won't catch us. She flipped a switch. Hold on. The ship's engines roared. Blue flames erupted behind them as the vessel pushed harder, faster, up into the silence between stars, but the cruiser behind them was closing the distance. David turned to Rissa. What happens if they catch us? She answered quietly. You'll be sold. Your body studied. Your mind erased. Laura and I will be locked in cages. David swallowed hard. That's not an option. Rissa met his eyes. Then let's make sure they don't catch us. She pressed her hand on a glowing panel. A second screen opened, revealing something underneath the ship. A pulse core. This ship has one last trick. David blinked. What kind of trick? It jumps, like, through space? Rissa nodded, but only once, and we don't know where it lands. It's old tech. It might fail. David looked at Laura, who was now holding his hand tightly. I trust you, he said. Rissa smiled again. Then here we go. The syndicate cruiser locked on. Final warning. Shut down or be fired upon. Rissa whispered something in her own language, then slammed her hand down. The ship trembled. A bright white flash exploded from behind them. The stars bent, the engines screamed, and in one impossible second, they vanished. Silence then. Darkness. David blinked, heart racing. The ship stopped shaking. Rissa slowly opened her eyes. Laura looked up, confused. Did we die? David asked. Rissa checked the panel. Her eyes widened. We made it. David looked out the side window. A planet floated outside. Blue skies, purple trees, golden rivers, and near the horizon, a small group of ships stood waiting. Not syndicate ships, refugee ships, their people. Rissa turned to him. This was my mother's world. It's safe. They don't allow slavers here, or hunters. David sat back in his chair, finally breathing again. They were safe. Really safe. Days passed. Rissa and Laura reconnected with their people. The refugee base gave David a small room of his own, food, clean clothes, and even medical care. They didn't ask him many questions, but they thanked him. Every single one of them. One old alien elder placed his hand on David's shoulder and said, You gave kindness without reward. That makes you family. A week later, David stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing forest below. Rissa walked up beside him. You're quiet, she said. David smiled. I've never had a view like this before. Rissa nodded. You can stay. No one will chase you here. David turned to her. You sure I belong? She didn't hesitate. You saved us. You fed us. You believed in us. You're one of us now. Laura ran up the stairs holding something. A necklace, a piece of the old escape pod. Shaped into a pendant, she placed it around David's neck. So you remember, she said with a smile. David smiled too. I'll never forget. And in the stars above, the syndicate searched, but they never found them again. Because in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a human and two alien girls became a family forever.